What if everything you've ever feared about death was based on a forgotten lie? What if the moment your heart stopped wasn't the end, but a beginning so profound, so personal, that even the stars seemed to hold their breath as you crossed into it? You've heard of the afterlife, heaven, hell, reincarnation, light at the end of the tunnel. But none of it prepares you for what really happens in the 45 sacred days after you take your last breath. Not 30, not 7, 45. A cycle hidden in ancient manuscripts, buried in lost tombs, whispered in dreams by those who returned. A journey mapped not by religion, but by vibration. And tonight, we open the veil, not as priests, not as skeptics, but as souls who know, deep inside, that something sacred awaits beyond this life, and no one ever told us what it truly is. So take a breath. Let your heart soften. Because once you hear this, you won't see death the same way again. And more importantly, you won't see life the same way again either. They say the first moment of death feels like waking up from a dream. Your body, once heavy, slow, trembling, suddenly feels light, weightless. There's no more pain, no hunger, no breath. But you still exist. You're aware. You can feel your thoughts, but they're quieter now. You can sense your body, but from a distance. Some describe this moment as floating. Others say it's like standing in a silent room where time has stopped. But all agree on one thing. It doesn't feel like dying. It feels like remembering. In Tibetan teachings, this is the first bardo, the transition between body and spirit. In the Bible, Ecclesiastes speaks of the silver cord breaking, the final tether between soul and flesh. Across traditions, this moment is seen as sacred, delicate, and irreversible. It's not dramatic, it's not violent, it's soft, like a thread slipping from a needle. But the soul doesn't immediately understand what's happened. You might still try to speak. You might still reach for your loved ones. But your voice doesn't echo. Your hands pass through the air like smoke. This is day one, the separation. And yet, you're not alone. Even in the silence, something watches, some presence, subtle, still, deeply loving, stands beside you. You may not see it, but you'll feel it. Guides, protectors, companions from beyond the veil. They've been waiting, not to take you, but to remind you that you are more than you remember. And here's where the journey begins. Not with punishment, not with judgment, but with confusion. You look at your body, still, motionless, surrounded by grief, and you don't understand. Not yet. This space between life and what comes next, it isn't blank. It's layered. Layered with emotion, with memory, with energy that hasn't finished moving. And the soul, fresh from the body, must pass through all of it, step by step, like a river finding its way back to the sea. The next few days are the hardest for those left behind, but for the soul, they're a kind of gentle awakening. On day 2, the realization begins to bloom. You are no longer in the world of form. The world is there, your room, your family, the sky, the light, but it's not solid anymore. It ripples, it glows strangely, sounds echo differently, and people don't see you. They cry, they pray, they touch your body, but they don't look into your eyes, because your eyes are not there. Some spirits panic here. They shout, they shake walls, they beg for attention. But the living only feel it as chills, flickers, whispers they think they imagined. Others remain quiet. They hover. They listen to every word spoken beside their body. They attend their own funeral. Not because they're stuck, but because the emotional imprint of life, of identity, is still fading, and fading takes time. By day 3, the soul begins to feel the edges of itself, what it really is beneath the personality. Some call this the subtle body, others call it the astral field. But the truth is, it's you, raw, vibrational, you without the mask. And that's when the soul begins to reflect, not in thought, in vibration. It feels what others are feeling, not just now, but what they felt from you during life. Every word you ever spoke, every touch, every wound, every grace. This isn't punishment, it's recognition. As if you're being gently shown, this is the echo you left behind. This is how you moved through the world. And here, the soul has its first real choice. Do you resist what you see, or do you open to it? Because how you respond, even now, begins to shape the path ahead. Some souls weep, others rejoice. Many simply pause, as if hearing themselves for the very first time. And while this reflection unfolds, something else begins to shift. You start to lose attachment to your name, to your story, to the little things that once defined you, your job, your fears, your possessions. One by one, they slip away, not torn, released, as if the soul itself is remembering that it was never those things. It only borrowed them, like clothes it now leaves behind. By day 4, the veil thins again, but this time, not between life and death, between soul and soul. You begin to sense others, not the living, but beings who dwell in this in-between. Some newly arrived, some ancient, some simply passing through. The spiritual world is not a void. It's populated, not with ghosts, but with consciousness. And now, you're one of them. The soul doesn't move like a traveler with a map. It moves by vibration. And on the 5th day, a deeper frequency begins to rise from within, not from memory, but from essence. It is here that the soul begins to feel something ancient, a recognition, not of faces or names, but of energy, of bonds that transcend time. This is when you first notice them, the ones you loved, the ones who left before you. Sometimes it's a parent, sometimes a child, sometimes a presence you can't name, but that feels like home. They do not speak in words. They appear in forms your soul will understand, not necessarily their last earthly shape, but in the frequency they held when you knew them in truth. And when you meet them again, there is no fear. There is only remembrance. This is not the same as a reunion on earth. There are no explanations, no small talk, no "where have you been?" Only energy recognizing energy, like two stars orbiting the same sun finally colliding into light. It is during days 6 to 8 that something even more profound happens. You begin to feel your own life, from the inside out. Not through thought, through immersion, through direct experience of everything you caused, both pain and joy, in others. This is not a judgment. There is no punishing God, no courtroom in the sky, only the soul, standing in the presence of its own vibration, seeing clearly what it truly was. You feel the warmth in the heart of a stranger you once smiled at. You feel the shame in the silence of someone you ignored. You feel the tears of someone you once loved but never forgave. You feel the ripple of your laughter in the life of a child. You feel it all, not remembered, but relived. This is often called the life review, but that phrase is too clinical. It's not a slideshow. It's a surrender, a soul immersing in itself, all the way down to the roots. In Kabbalistic teachings, this is the moment of reflected light. In ancient Egyptian rites, it was the weighing of the heart against the feather of truth. In near-death accounts, It's described again and again. I saw everything, and I felt it all. Some souls collapse here under the weight of their own sorrow. But even then, they are never alone. Always, there are presences nearby. Guides, ancestors, luminous companions who walk beside but do not interfere. They wait, patiently, until the soul chooses whether to integrate or to turn away. Because integration is not automatic. It requires acceptance. To accept that you caused harm. To accept that you held light. To accept that you were human. And that is often the hardest thing of all. You may feel waves of regret or unexpected peace. You may laugh at how seriously you took things, or cry for the love you never gave. All of this is sacred. All of this is allowed, because nothing is more holy in this stage than truth. By day 9, the soul is stripped bare, not in weakness, in clarity. You are no longer a name or a memory. You are what you became. And now, you stand at the first threshold, not a door, not a wall, but a shift so subtle that only those who are ready can cross it. This is the passage between what you once were and what you might yet become. In ancient Vedic texts, it is said that the soul must pass through layers of subtle sheaths, from the physical to the mental to the blissful. This is the transition from the mental to the karmic, from story to essence. On days 10 to 12, the soul is drawn into what feels like a mist. Here, reality dissolves, not into nothing, but into a shimmering field where time no longer has edges. Some souls experience this as a dream, others as light. Some report swirling tunnels, others float in stillness. But across all experiences, there is one common thread: silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of preparation. The soul is being made ready, not by an external force, but by its own readiness for what comes next. Because now, something sacred approaches, a meeting, a convergence, a presence unlike anything the soul has encountered before. And the strange thing is, it doesn't feel new. It feels familiar, like the echo of a song you once knew as a child, now returning in full. It is you, beyond memory. You, before the veil. You, as essence. And when you reach this moment, everything changes. By day 13, the soul is no longer seeking answers. It is becoming the answer. Not by force, but by release. The past has begun to loosen, and what remains now is presence. In this state of expansion, something extraordinary begins to happen. A gentle stirring of soul memory. You start to remember not just the life you just lived, but others. Glimpses of lifetimes long buried rise like mist off ancient ground. Not in full, not like watching a movie, but in flashes of energy, emotion, recognition. A woman's face you never met, but feel you've always loved. A battlefield soaked in silence. A forest where your hands once healed. A temple where your name was never spoken, but your soul was known. The past lives return not to punish, but to reveal a pattern, a karmic arc. The threads you've woven through time, looped again and again through love, fear, power, silence. And it is in this remembrance that the soul begins to sense something bigger. Purpose. Not the kind printed in books, not the one you spent your earth life chasing, but the quiet, inner knowing of why your soul chose that incarnation. Why you chose your parents, your body, your limitations, your pain. It all begins to make sense, not logically, but spiritually. You feel it, like breath returning to a chest that had forgotten how to rise. On day 14, the guides draw closer, not as saviors, not as judges, but as mirrors. Some may appear as ancestors, some as beings of light. Some may not appear at all, but be sensed, felt, known. Their presence is gentle, their energy ancient, and their purpose is simple: to offer clarity, not control, to show you what's next, without telling you what to do. Because now, on the cusp of the 15th day, the soul is given its first real choice, and it is not a choice made with words, but with vibration. The soul stands between three paths, not laid out in front like roads, but woven inside its own field. One path leads to return, reincarnation, not as punishment, but as a continuation. If there is more to learn, more to complete, more to release. Another path leads to rest and healing, a sojourn in spiritual realms designed for integration, reflection, and recovery. And the third path leads to service, entering higher planes where souls assist others, guide incarnations, or help build realities not yet born. The soul doesn't pick one, it resonates toward one, like a tuning fork, humming in harmony with its own truth. And here's the sacred key no religion wants to admit. You are not assigned a destiny. You align with one. The soul does not obey a sentence. It follows a song. And that song is one it has been singing since the beginning of time. If your life was lived in fear, in reaction, in denial, that vibration may pull you toward the cycle of return, not as failure, but as another chance. If your life was lived with awareness, even amid pain, the soul may be ready to ascend to the next octave of being. This is the law not of reward and punishment, but of resonance. And by day 16, the pull begins, not like a force, more like a tide, a subtle draw toward the plane that mirrors your soul's frequency. But even now, even here, there is room for grace, because the soul is still soft, still in between, still listening. And that is where the living come in. Because what you do now in this world, for those who have departed, still matters. Prayers, candles, forgiveness, names whispered with love. These are not rituals. They are bridges, and they reach farther than we can imagine. By day 17, the soul begins to revisit the world it left behind, not physically, but emotionally. It returns to the home, the people, the spaces that shaped its journey. But this time, the soul does not want anything. It simply observes, witnesses, releases. It sees the house where it was born, the child it never got to raise, the wounds that were never spoken aloud, the love that was never expressed. And as it watches, the soul begins to understand. Nothing was ever wasted. Every breath, every silence, every choice, even the wrong ones, were steps on a sacred path. This is not just nostalgia, it is liberation. Because now, the soul is invited to do the one thing that few humans ever fully master in life. Let go. And it is here, somewhere between day 18 and day 20, that the soul learns something that breaks the heart wide open. What you cling to becomes your shadow. What you release becomes your light. And so it lets go. Of guilt, of anger, of old roles, unfinished stories, identities that no longer serve. It weeps without tears. It breathes without lungs. It forgives without needing an apology. And in that letting go, the soul begins to rise, not upward, inward. The earth fades into light, not because it's no longer real, but because its grip has softened. And now, finally, the soul is ready for the next layer of truth. By day 21, the soul has become quiet, not silenced, but still. There is no more reaching, no more questioning, just a sense of being carried by something that does not move. This is the realm of consciousness, a place beyond memory, beyond identity, beyond even form. It cannot be described in pictures. There are no cities of light here, no roads, no faces, only frequency, only presence. And in this presence, the soul begins to feel something it had forgotten across lifetimes: unity. It is no longer a someone. It is becoming part of the greater field, the divine matrix from which all souls emerge and to which all return. And in this field, something begins to awaken. The remembrance of the original purpose. Not the goals written in journals, not the careers, the relationships, or the plans, but the original intention, why your soul entered that specific body, that family, that story. You begin to see, with vision, not eyes, the blueprint of your life. You understand why you suffered, why certain people came, why certain dreams never arrived, and why others did, only to fall apart. It wasn't failure, it was architecture, a divine living design shaped by your own soul, and by the souls of others who agreed to play roles, as mirrors, as tests, as love. And here, there is no regret, only reverence, even for the pain. Because in this plane, you no longer ask, why did this happen to me? You begin to ask, why did I choose to experience this? And what did it awaken? And that question doesn't stay unanswered. Because now, on days 23 and 24, the soul enters a new space, a place of direct communion. Here, the guides who once stood silently now draw near in full presence. Not with words, with knowing. You feel them. Beings of great light, mentors, ancestors, soul companions, archetypal intelligences. Some may appear as light forms, some as familiar symbols, some as inner voices you thought were your own during life, now revealed to be their echoes. And the communication is not conversation, it is transmission. Thoughts are felt. Truth is shared as energy, not explanation. You are not told what you are. You remember it. This is where many souls begin to weep, not from sadness, from the overwhelming grace of feeling, for the first time in memory, completely seen, completely understood, completely loved, without condition. This is not the love of human affection. It is not attachment. It is not romance. It is a state of being, a light that says, you were never alone, you never failed, and now you are ready to return to who you've always been. By day 25, the soul begins to undergo a sacred calibration. It starts to tune, like an instrument adjusting to a symphony it hasn't heard in ages. Everything you lived, every choice you made, every fear you held and transcended, all of it begins to shape a singular vibration, not a score, not a reward, a resonance. And that resonance now determines the next plane. Because just as Earth has many environments, oceans, deserts, forests, the spiritual world has realms, not as punishment, not as reward, but as natural destinations for evolving energy. And so, by days 26 to 28, the soul is slowly drawn to the place that matches its light. This isn't a decision. It's not handed down. There's no one saying, you go here. The soul simply begins to feel itself called, like water seeking its level, like a flame flickering toward the wind that shaped it. Some souls move toward healing realms, gentle landscapes of restoration and reflection, places that feel like gardens made of music, where trauma is unwound, where energy is renewed. Others are drawn toward learning planes, like spiritual cities of knowledge, libraries made of vibration, temples not built, but felt. And some are pulled into service planes, realms where souls assist others in their journey, not as angels, but as guides in training, companions for incarnations yet to come. But there are also souls who feel no clear call, souls who linger, not because they're unworthy, but because they still carry a frequency too tied to the earth, too tethered to fear, to anger, to regret. These souls remain in the lower astral layers, not in torment, in disorientation, still cycling through old emotions, still trying to understand. And yet, even here, they are never abandoned. Because the living still matter. Your prayers still matter. Your love still matters. A whispered name, a candle lit, a tear shed in surrender, not of grief, but of grace. These reach them. These touch them. And in many cases, they are what helped them rise. By day 29, the soul has found its home, a plane that is not final, but foundational, a new ground on which to stand, a new sky under which to expand. And here, the soul is offered its final initiation, to look back, one last time, with eyes now open. By day 30, the soul is no longer looking for the world it left behind. It is no longer clinging to names, bodies, roles, or regrets. Instead, it turns inward, not to escape, but to integrate. Because now begins the most delicate part of the entire journey, the final merging between what the soul was and what it is becoming. The realm it has reached is not static. It breathes, it reflects, it asks for nothing, but reveals everything. And so, in these sacred days, day 30 to day 35, the soul begins to witness not just its life, but its entire arc. Lifetimes, patterns, sacred contracts formed and fulfilled. Others left open, waiting to return again in another age. This is the plane of divine remembrance. It is here that the soul remembers its companions, the ones who incarnated beside it again and again through shifting roles. The mother who once was a daughter, the enemy who once was a friend, the child who once saved your life in a forgotten century. It all returns, and with it, the soul finally sees nothing was random, no meeting, no betrayal, no miracle. Each soul in your story signed the page with you before the ink of time began to flow. And when this truth settles in, something else is born. Compassion. Not just for others, but for yourself. You forgive not out of superiority, but out of clarity. You were trying. They were too. Even the pain had a purpose, and that forgiveness becomes the key. Because between days 36 to 39, the soul begins to expand, beyond the self. This is where identity dissolves into light, where consciousness merges into a kind of collective being, not a hive, but a harmony. You are still you, but you is now a doorway, and through it flows the entire universe. This stage has been called many names. In Kabbalah, it is the world of Atziluth, pure emanation. In Buddhist cosmology, the clear light. In mystic Christianity, the beatific vision. And in Vedic teachings, the realm of Sat Chit Ananda, pure being, consciousness, and bliss. There are no words here, no forms, only presence, only truth. And yet, even here, a question begins to rise. Not spoken, just felt. What now? Because even after all this, the soul still holds free will. And so, in the final days, day 40 to day 44, the soul is offered a sacred choice: return, rest, or rise further. To return is to re-enter the wheel, not as punishment, but as possibility. Perhaps to complete something left unfinished, to love someone again, to learn, to teach. To rest is to remain in this realm, to continue expanding, healing, preparing for a future time. This is where many souls reside between incarnations, not asleep, but growing in silence. To rise further is to enter realms beyond individuality, to become something new, something vast, something not easily spoken of in human language. Some say these souls become guides. Others say they create worlds. Some say they dissolve into God. The truth? The soul chooses what it is ready for, and no path is better. Only aligned. But this is where the last day arrives. Day 45. The sacred completion. The final breath before the veil closes, and the soul takes its place. Here, everything becomes still again. Not empty, but full. The soul has seen, has felt, has remembered, and now it belongs again. Where? Exactly where its light leads. And the rest of us, still walking earth, still breathing air, still holding grief, we feel it. In dreams, in whispers, in the wind that brushes our cheeks when no one is there. Because the journey doesn't end. It only transforms. Your loved one who passed, they're not gone. They're walking this path. They're remembering who they are. And when the time is right, they will remember you too. Not in body, in soul. So if your heart is aching, if you wonder where they are, if you long to feel them just one more time, close your eyes, light a candle, say their name, not in grief, but in honor. Because on the other side, your voice is still heard, and in the silence, you are never alone. You've now walked the map few ever see. The 45 sacred days after death are not myth. They are memory, etched into the spirit of every living being. And now that you know the path, how will you live this life? Because every thought, every action, every moment of love or fear shapes the steps you will take after your final breath. And perhaps the greatest secret of all is that death was never the end. It was only the opening of a door that's been waiting for you since before you were born. If this journey touched something deep in you, let it continue. Comment what part stirred your soul most. Like this video not for us, but for those who need to find it. And share it with someone you love, in life or in spirit. We are all walking each other home, and now you know the way.